Hello friend. So I was up late working on the CNC machine, and when I finally went to bed, I had a dream. It went like this. The lathe had somehow moved and grown these magical drawers in its midsection. For a moment I was in tool storage heaven, but then I was in the forest and it was raining toenail clippings before the world got swallowed by a bus. But that's irrelevant to our story. It's only been about, 10 years, but it's time to take this lathe off the pallet that it's sitting on. This is one of those jobs that seems like it should be easy, but because of the awkward enclosed space, actually turns out to be pretty tricky. The legs of the engine hoist won't fit either side of the lathe, even long ways on, with the pallet attached. Hence this pre-jacking up jiggery-pokery. We had to saw some bits off the pallet, and I lost track of the number of times we had to lift the lathe up and down before finally getting the pallet out of the way, and then of course we have to lower it onto something so we can get the engine hoist out. Attacking from a different angle, we can get the supports out and put the lathe down on these handy scraps of plywood. That was quite epic. We'll have to take the other side, one of these legs off to get the hoist out, but I think we're in a roughly final position. I'll try it like this for a little bit, see how much I want to raise it up. How'd you like the new lathe position, Perky? We're getting there with it. It's not too bad. I was a little bit worried about doing that, but after seeing how flimsily attached it was, I don't think that's going to do anything. So this is where we begin toolboxifying the midsection of the lathe. If you're wondering why we're doing this before the lathe's in its final position and levelled, it's because we're waiting for some high tensile threaded bar to arrive. Now, my experience of sheet metal work is relatively sparse, especially making toolbox drawers like this, so I'm kind of making it up as I go along. And as if to prove a point, this is how you don't tap thin metal. We've been using more of these scraps to make the enclosure for the electronics of the CNC build, but these are about 1.5 millimeters or 1/16 of an inch thick. I guess lots of people wouldn't even bother tapping such thin metal, but either way, you certainly don't need a drill press to align the tap perfectly. A battery drill is plenty good enough. The cold cut saw seems pretty useful for cutting straight lines in sheet metal like this. So this hodgepodgery is kind of in place. I'm just going to tack weld it here, then take it out, weld it properly. I figured I could use the bracing that I took from the base of the lathe earlier. It turned out to be a bit thinner than the other stuff I've been using though, and the beginning and ends of cuts seemed a little bit problematic. I'm using a polycarbonate abrasive wheel to remove as little paint as I can get away with removing. They're a bit pricey, something of a luxury, but they're really fast and they don't remove much base material. I guess it's kind of comedically ridiculous to be using all these scraps and cobbling together these Frankenstein drawers, but it's what I have to hand. It feels kind of cool that it came out of a skip, but structurally it's, I suppose, not as sound as it could be. I'm hopeful these drawers are going to be pretty strong once they're all welded up. I'm imagining the roller slides that I had left over from a project I did like 15 years ago are probably going to be the weakest link. Right, so I've been in and out, back and forth, trying to get this to fit. Hopefully now we're getting somewhere. There were some bits and bobs at the back where I needed to tack out some parts. Still a slight jarring there. Okay, here it goes, the final drawer. We've just cut the top off, so hopefully it's going to match nicely with there. We did a little bit of abominationing there. Oh. Okay, so this bows down in the middle, unfortunately. That does the same. So this does the same. You can see how much that bows down. Maybe it doesn't come across in the video, but these are really quite wide drawers, so here's a fix for that. What this is going to be like with some heavy things in. This is very heavy. Okay, as you see, it's catching on that drawer there. To solve this problem, I don't know if I'm going to put a divider in there like I have up the top here. That limits and sort of makes the drawer. Well, it's a little bit bird pooey, but there's nothing new there. We'll use 3 of these for the handles. I could use something like this to attach it, but these little nuts are just the tiniest bit too wide. Here is a slimmed down one. It's going to go in there like that, and you'll notice that too doesn't quite fit because of the flange around the edge now. So what I've done is just a tiny grind on either side. That's working pretty well. Here comes the comedically long, awkward, spinny cleanup. This is the knot I used. It's one of my absolute favourites. With the loop of cord, you make one loop and then another loop, and then you just fold them together, insert the item, and that's it. You've got a nice knot that can do sideways loading, and the tighter you pull it, the more it grips on. As soon as the tension's released, it comes loose easily. For some unknown reason to me, the access to this back panel, which was where the coolant pump was stored, is from right round the back, which is super inconvenient. It'd be nice to make a door in the front here. I'll reinforce the back with some extra steel so we don't lose any strength. And just by bolting it down to the hard concrete floor, I think we'll gain anyway. And just like that, we have 2 holes that make it look like a child's drawing of a computer. Great. I expect some people might find the very idea of wood being used on a metal lathe to be slightly offensive, but the doors for this cupboard are going to be made from this skip originating shower wall material. It's quite a premium material and I always pick it up when I find it. The edges are the weak spot though, hence the aluminium trim. For the door closure, I was just going to use 2 stacked rare earth magnets, but I guess it'll just be 1. To permanently and solidly set the threaded rod in place, I'm mixing up some 2-part epoxy with a little bit of very fine sand mixed in. That just thickens it up and adds an abrasive element as they get assembled. The abrasion gives the epoxy a sort of wet sanding effect, which makes an even stronger bond. We flew over it and sped up time earlier, but you should know manoeuvring this engine hoist into fine position really wasn't very easy. I ended up using this big pole to lever it, and that actually worked really well. Half the battle is getting these casters just to point in the right direction. We should just pause here for a quick warning. Those of a sensitive disposition might want to skip the next few moments.
What? That's a bit of serious measuring error. Yeah. Are you in the right place? It's coming down.
That's good. Apologies to anyone who was distressed by that. I feel suitably humbled. Let's mark up where it is now, drill some holes, stick some rods in and get this back in place. The other thing that's particularly difficult about moving things with the engine hoist is the lowering. It's really hard to do it slowly. No matter how gently you try and do the control, it actually requires quite a lot of force to undo it when it's locked on. This levelling is proving to be quite tricky. I'm really pleased with the small amount of extra height I'm getting here. Directly on the floor, the lathe's a little bit too low for me. I'm a bit hunched over. Once it's all level and I'm happy with the height, I'll probably fill in those gaps with concrete pads or something. Letting it settle. It took a few sittings with the super sensitive level and the spanners here to get this as flat and level as I was happy with, but I think we're there. Now we get the reward of putting the drawers in place. There's still plenty of room to use the foot brake. It's got a very slight pre-grubbed look about it, but I think that's going to be just great. They've got a pleasing action. And they do come out all the way, which is also cool. Put the shelf in, it's got a paint job worthy of a novice graffiti artist.
Smooth. This looks extremely organised. Got little cushions and everything. Very nice. Not sure about the golf ball.
Blondie Hacks has a really great video I'll leave a link to where Quinn talks about hierarchies of storage, having first order access things in the front of top drawers all the way through to things you don't use very often. I still have this tool rack just on the side of the lathe where I have things I use all the time like chuck keys and the like. Little bits like dial indicators and stuff that stay safe in the first drawer. Down below, maybe radioactive bits, and then through to things in the cupboard that can be really heavy and I don't use very often. And the back of the cupboard, obviously, hardly ever. Thanks for watching. Next time, who knows what we're on next time? Probably the CNC. Hope to see you again. Bye!